Hi, this is Peter Friedrich, and today we're talking with Ruwa Shah about the Kashmir issue. So, Ruwa, I want to welcome you, and I want to thank you for your willingness to offer your opinions and express your feelings about what's happening in Kashmir, which is actually where you're from. So, can you briefly introduce yourself and go from there?
Uh, Hi, Peter. Thank you for doing this interview, not only with me and with a lot of other Kashmiris that you're doing. It's a great gesture, and it's a great way, actually, to you know make people aware of the happenings in my homeland, Kashmir.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And can you tell
So
us a little bit about yourself?
yeah, I'm a journalist basically, but here in Turkey, I'm a student. I'm learning filmmaking. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Okay. So, Ruwa, you're from Kashmir, and since 4 or 5 August, there's been this ongoing communications blackout there. And as this has been ongoing, in recent days, the Indian media has reported that this has been either relaxed in part or in whole, that it's been lifted or semi-lifted, and that some landlines have been restored, and that people should be able to begin getting back in touch with their family and their loved ones back in Kashmir. What do you have to say about that?
I have not been able to touch. I have not been able to contact my family from fourth of August, and if any sort of communication has been restored, it is said that a few landline phones are working in a few areas of the capital, Srinagar, which is, I think, just it's a mere eyewash, because landlines are not used by anybody these days.
Hmm.
I mean, we have. I don't think even in our neighborhood we have a landline connection. And even if they have, or even if they are, let's assume that there are some connections working in some areas, and but there are people who are living in foreign countries and their families are back home. For example, me, they can't, they cannot connect an international call from the landline, even if they have, in that, let's assume they have. So it's just a mere eyewash, which the Indian government is trying to create a narrative that we are starting to lift the curfews, relaxations, open up schools. I mean, come on, who are you kidding? We're living in 2019 in the world of 4G and 5G, and you are talking about reopening a few landline phones in Kashmir, which is what you called as relaxation in the restrictions. So I don't think that it's any substantial step that has been taken. It's just to sabotage the facts, the realities that are happening in Kashmir right now. And because also India also is facing a lot of international media pressure. A lot of people are writing and talking about Kashmir internationally. So I think they just got under a little pressure, and they're just trying to uh, create a counter narrative that things are getting back to what they call as normal, which is not normal, in reality. So and we are so used to those narratives that Indian government always does. Like, it's like they do step one in justice, and then they do step two, and then they go back to step one, and then they say, oh, see, we are back there. So basically we are talking about everything that you have been doing is wrong, whether it's abrogation of Article 370, or whether it is the atrocities that you have been doing in Kashmir for the last 75 years. Now everybody is talking about 370, but Kashmir has been a dispute for the last 75 years, and there has to be a resolution according to the aspirations of the people of Kashmir and the United Nations resolution. So Article 370 is important. Yes, it is. There is a definite importance of this, but we again want to go back to the main issue, which is resolution of the Kashmir issue. So these things, we Kashmiris are used to these narratives and lies that the state of India, tries to create.
So let me ask you, Ruwa. So as you're talking about how this it has been an ongoing issue for so long, and that there's this issue where perhaps I don't know if this is your perspective, but perhaps one could view it that there's this misdirection, that this communications blackout is in place, and everybody's worried about that. And yet that's just one out of a great many broader issues in the conflict. And the real issue is the underlying conflict that's been going on for decades. So let me ask you, first of all, how often do you speak with your family? And secondly, in context, in relation to that, can you tell us a little bit about your father? Because, well, you, like many other expatriated Kashmiris, would be calling back home to speak with your family, I imagine, on a regular basis, and I'd like to know how often. I understand that you have had very limited contact with your father even before this communications blackout.
Right. I speak to my mother almost every day. Before I give them come back from school, and I have to have this. You just have to tell her that I'm fine. Well, even if you don't talk for a long time, it's just okay. At one minute call, it just it's just fine. And then my father, who is in an Indian jail right now for the last 2 years, more than 2 years now. And so my father is allowed to make a call back home for 5 minutes in 1 week. And when he does that call, my mother calls me and tells me that I got a call from your father and he's fine or whatever. So I have no news about him. I have absolutely no idea how he is. And definitely not about my family in Kashmir also. So as I said, that we our lives have always been not so normal. We live in we are from the part of the world which has been kept in this dark dark age, and communication blackouts, jails, uh, those house raids, curfews. We have all normalized it in a way, but basically it's not normal. And you realize it when you come out of that world. For example, if I am in Turkey today, I'm seeing everything around is normal. And then I feel this disconnect with the normal, and I realize, no, this is not the life that that I could relate to. So this you realize when you come out of that dungeon, I call it. And I think this is most of the Kashmiris. It's not only me.
Now, you've recently written about your family, and you wrote, and let me quote you, Rua. You wrote, "My mother and brother are my only source of information about my aged, ailing father who is in India's Tihar jail. They speak to him for 5 minutes a week. Since they are under a military curfew in Kashmir, I have no news about my father. My imagination fails me when I think about him and other Kashmiri leaders with him who were arrested 2 years ago by India's National Investigative Agency. They have been imprisoned without any charges being proven against them. I wonder how my father is holding up in jail. Despite his failing health, he kept our morale high. I hope he has not given up." Can you briefly tell us, who is your father? Why is he in jail? And how do you think his imprisonment is connected to this current issue in Kashmir?
My father is a Hurriyat leader. Hurriyat Conference is one of the largest parties in Kashmir that is involved in this freedom struggle for many decades now, and he's basically somebody who is rebelling against the occupation of India in Kashmir. And he has always been a non-violent person, and he has his opinion has also been like pro dialogue. And so 2 years we have seen him in jail many times before. Since I grew up, I have seen my father going to jail a lot of times. But 2 years ago, the National Investigative Agency of India, they arrested eight to nine Hurriyat leaders, including my father, and the charges are that they are the offenses are such that even in Indian court, even in their own courts, they could not prove it for the last 2 years. So it's all basically now everything is getting clear. So first they arrested those Hurriyat leaders and they created a political void in Kashmir, because Hurriyat was something that had a kind of a control over the population in Kashmir. But when they arrested them, they left the ailing first tier leadership alone. Without their party, they couldn't do much, which is I'm talking about my grandfather Gilani Sahab. He cannot do much on his own because there are a lot of people. There were a lot of people around him, but they kept them in jail. Then they banned this organization called Jamaat Islami, and another political void was created. And now it came to the mainstream. Now the mainstream leadership has been arrested, and now this step of abrogation of Article 370. So basically, they took it one by one, and now they have sort of erased everything that was coming in between their way of doing what they wanted to do, which is it was a plan of the larger strategy, basically.
So let me ask
So
you, Rua.
yeah.
I spoke with another Kashmiri not so long ago, and the way that they phrased it was that Kashmir's society has been entirely depoliticized, and that it's become such that taking any political move, no matter how legitimate and nonviolent and so forth, any legitimate move in the political realm has been criminalized. How do you feel about that sentiment?
That is exactly true. If you also see Home Minister of India Amit Shah, before what happened on August 5 in the Indian Parliament, a bill was passed in the same Parliament. It's called as the UAPA bill, which means Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. Under that bill, you can call anybody you want as a terrorist. So this is something huge. This is not easy. You can frame anybody as a terrorist without any charge. You don't need anything to prove those charges against them. So
This bill, I've heard about this. As I understand it, the difference is that governments around the world typically they do declare organizations to be terrorist organizations.
right,
That's not uncommon. That's very common.
but this
But
is
to
about people.
unilaterally to declare an individual without charge,
Exactly.
without trial, to
Right.
apply that label. Okay.
So that is what I'm worried about, because my father and other leaders in the prison with him are under the charges of UAPA Act, and this is what worries me. They can declare anybody as whatever they want, and there would be no. We have never expected any kind of justice from the Indian judiciary system. We have seen it in the past when two Kashmiris were hanged without proper trial. Even the Supreme Court of India said when they hanged Afzal Guru, who was a parliament attack convict, he wasn't accused, and when he was convicted, they said that just to satisfy the collective conscience of the entire nation, we are giving him the capital punishment, and they hung him. And from this court, from the court that gave a judgment of this sorts, and we are talking about the world's largest democracy here. So when they give a judgment of this sorts, there is already no expectation that people of Kashmir have from such courts. Especially me, I have absolutely no expectations from any of the courts in India regarding my father's case. And when it comes to what you said, the sentence that you used, it is true. They will do anything they want to do just to depoliticize everything and to make things happen though they want, which is actually the occupational tactics that are used by Israel in Palestine.
So moving on, Rua, I would like to ask you about something that you recently wrote, where you said that, and let me quote you, "It's true that Kashmiris have survived many military curfews and crackdowns. There were times when the siege lasted for about 2 months. There were times when Kashmiris weren't allowed to step out of their homes for weeks. They still survived. But this time it feels strange and completely different. What is different about this time?"
This time it was about something which is our homeland and the fear that our demography is going to be changed. Kashmir is a Muslim majority state, and when this act has been introduced, this act has been removed that guaranteed us the right to our land. we fear that our land might be taken by the occupier and the demography will change. They're already talking about business investments and everything that can happen in the coming months. So people are not going to stay quiet about this. People are going to resist, whether today or tomorrow, whenever the restrictions are lifted, or whenever this it's like a the silence before the storm. It's just gathering up, piling up. The anger is piling up, and it might just burst someday. Which is why it's different this time. We know that we are not going to stop resisting this move, or stop opposing this move that the Indian government has taken. We have lived through curfews that lasted for almost a year in 2016, but that was like anger that had to go, and it was like an intifada, if you are aware of the term. It was like the protests, people were on the streets to protest, and it turns into a snowball effect. When one is killed, the other people come out for him to protest against that killing, and then they open the fire on that protest, and then they kill another. So we know the pattern of how the Indian state behaves in Kashmir, and that is what exactly we fear this time as well. But we, as much as we hope that it doesn't happen, we also know that it is the truth, and we know it.
So briefly, let me ask you, you mentioned that the Kashmir is a Muslim majority region, and there's this fear of demographic change, which I've heard from many other people, many other Kashmiris that I've spoken with. In your perspective, is this conflict, this struggle, is it about religion?
It was not always about religion, but it's a territorial dispute, and it's a political dispute. But now it has been given this color, and the narrative the discourse has been changed as a religious dispute, because it becomes a Kashmir, a Muslim majority state. If you know Kashmir, we have all kinds of religions in Kashmir. We have Hinduism, we have Sikhism, we have Islam, and we have Christianity, and everybody has been living in peace and harmony, except for the unfortunate incidents that happened with the Kashmiri Pandits, which was again the state of the act of the state, just to defame the freedom struggle, rightful struggle of the people of Kashmir. And we have been saying, we have been condemning it forever, but that was one fateful incident that happened. But otherwise, people of Kashmir have always lived in a harmony, in a peaceful way, including where all the religions were, we're living in harmony. So I think what is to be noted here is that demographical changes means that if we tomorrow, if a plebiscite is, if not if, a plebiscite has to be conducted to solve the Kashmir issue, right? And when that plebiscite happens, the majority would be of the people who would not have had the Kashmir state's citizenship always. They could be non-Kashmiris tomorrow participating in that vote. That is the fear. That is what we mean when we say that demographical changes are in place.
Okay, in relation to that, and again briefly, let me ask you. I spoke with another academic the other day who described this as a struggle for indigenous rights, and you've just now used the terms territorial dispute. How do you feel about that sentiment?
I think we have grown up amid a different terminology when it comes to Kashmir conflict. People have said it's a territorial dispute, it's a political dispute, it is a religious dispute, as you said. But at the end, it is as simple as that. It is like millions of people living in a place, in a piece of land which is trapped between three nuclear powers, India, Pakistan, and China, and they have aspirations of either living in a free country called Kashmir, or merging Kashmir with Pakistan or with India. So that is what the United Nations resolutions actually talks about. Let the people of Kashmir decide. It is as simple as that. But of course, unfortunately, because of the strength of the occupier, which is India, there have been induced narratives that have been, defaming the rightful struggle of the people of Kashmir.
So, Rua, you recently wrote, I am no stranger to turmoil. Most of my childhood is marked with Indian Army ransacking my home and taking away my father. You have also described Kashmir as a beautiful but a painful dungeon and written about the horrifying scenes of blood. What was it like growing up in Kashmir?
It has been a very, very tough childhood in Kashmir, and uh, I remember those raids when the police or the paramilitary troopers would enter our home along with their boots and guns, and they would just ransack everything around us. Initially, we did not I as a child did not sincerely understand what was going on, but as we grew up with this. And I'll give you a small example. When I was a kid, we did not have this culture of changing our clothes before we sleep or putting on night suits, because our mother would always be alert and they'll say, like, just sleep in what you're wearing, because anybody could come anytime at any time. And you know what I mean. It's not normal basically, but we kind of grew up in that kind of an environment. And always seeing our father go, and our mother would lie to us that he's gone to Delhi or he's gone for some work, these kind of situations. And I saw it, my father being attacked also once, when he had a very narrow escape. And at that time other things happened, so it has been a very rough childhood, and it doesn't go away even when we grow up. I'm living a different life right now, but it doesn't go away. It's always at the back of your head. And that is what and how we relate to Kashmir so closely.
And I recently spoke with another Kashmiri who made mention of this idea that, in his perspective, there is no Kashmiri in Kashmir who has not witnessed some violent incident at some point in their life. I wonder if you agree with that or not.
Of course I do. I think every Kashmiri, in one way or the other, directly or indirectly, has had an interaction with the life, with this conflict, with the bloodshed, with a lot of things that happen. For example, we have seen paramilitary troopers committing heinous atrocities on the streets of Kashmir. And of course, there are Kashmiris are witnessing this, have been witnessing this. And now that you mentioned it, it's only this process that every generation witnesses a new phase of struggle movement, the freedom movement. For example, in 2008, I witnessed it firsthand in 2008. I mean, apart from the fact that I belong to a political family and what I saw at home from my childhood, in 2008, I saw it on the streets for the first time. And when I saw it, I understood it very closely. And with me, a lot of other Kashmiris saw it. And that is when a lot of young people opted for violence, and they picked up guns against the Indian occupation. Then in 2011 again, in 2016 again. So it just, they are just making every generation witness it, so that it doesn't end, even if it might have ended. But they make sure that the struggle of uh, Kashmiris do not end, they continue to struggle.
Let me ask you, Ruwa. You've written, my friends in Delhi keep on saying that Kashmir is an integral part of India. I do not contest them. Neither do I question their obsession for Kashmir. I just have a simple question to the stakeholders. How can you do this to the people whom you call your own? Keeping that in mind, what are your thoughts on why this is happening in Kashmir right now? And how do you feel about the Modi government's new shift in policy towards Kashmir? And what do you think the motive behind it is?
When I wrote that piece in 2016, it was when Burhan Wani, a young militant leader, was killed in Kashmir, and hundreds and thousands of people came on the streets. And I remember more than 100 people were also killed, and hundreds of others were blinded. So I was reporting from Kashmir for an Indian news agency at that time. And when I came to when I went back to my office, started work in Delhi, I realized that Indian colleagues or friends whom I had in India, they asked those questions that about life and about how does it feel to live in a curfew, how does it feel, how do you manage this and that. But the basic question was never asked, or it was never addressed, which is the problem or the issue of Kashmir. You know, they they always maintain this narrative that Kashmir is an integral part of India. You might say whatever you want to say, but it remains an integral part of India, and we will not discuss beyond and further this. That is what this, when this question came to my mind, that okay, if we are your integral part, how could you do this to us? You are killing people, having no mercy at all, and you are telling us that we are your own. If we are, even this question was even valid to the people of India, who were being fed through a proper propaganda of Indian media that it is an integral part and whatever. Why do not the Indian people question their own government for what they are doing in Kashmir? That is what came in my mind at that time. And coming to your second part of the question, the Modi government, I think Modi has played the Kashmir card wrong all the way. I think he does not understand Kashmir issue, and I think Congress had a better way of handling the issue when it comes to you know uh, internationally. Kashmir has been in news more than it was when there was Congress government in Kashmir, so in India, so which is bad for Modi actually, but which is when we talk about the issue and internationalizing the issue or making people aware of what is happening in Kashmir, it is good for Kashmir issue. But for his own politics, I think he has played it wrong all the way. And this move is also not going to settle down so easily. I believe that there are going to this is going to be a long summer or winter, or we don't have the count anymore. I don't know how long it's going to last.
What do you think? What do you think the motive was behind this latest action, though? With it was done quickly, it was done unannounced, and it was done actually very soon after the BJP came back into power in May.
It has always been on their agenda, right? Even on their manifesto. uh, I think BJP actually had only two agendas, which is the construction of the Ram Mandir and the abrogation of Article 370, which is why people voted him to power, basically. So it was expected, but it was not expected to be done in this manner. That is what the Indians say. But what Kashmiris say is that we are not surprised, because it does not also have any loyalty to the Kashmir issue. Abrogation of Article 370 is important, I agree, but our issue is different. It is not Article 370. It is the dispute of Kashmir, to which India, Pakistan, and Kashmir is a party. So Article 370 is just something that will give it will turn the events, it will twist the line of events in what happens in the struggle. But I think I do not agree with this, that it has because we do not have any loyalty to it. And why they did it in this way? Because they knew that it would be opposed by the people of Kashmir. They wanted to control the reaction that would have emerged out of Kashmir after they took this step, and they have done it quite well. And I think this is a never before thing that we saw in Kashmir today. They have never been able to put curbs and restrictions in this manner, and I think it is always going to be in this manner from now on.
To what extent do you believe that the voices of Kashmiris have been given a place, or a prominent place, or the preeminent place at the table in deciding what should happen with Kashmir?
You mean in India and the globally?
In terms of Kashmir itself, as far as Kashmiris having a voice in determining what happens with Kashmir in the future, have they been given a voice?
Absolutely not. Especially when it comes to the political powers. Kashmiris have absolutely no political power. They are nowhere, nowhere is any Kashmiri given that politically importance that a Kashmiri should be given, because as I said, it's a dispute to which Kashmir, Pakistan, and India is a party, and Kashmiris need to be included in this. And India never did that. They had some stooges, they had some Kashmiris whom they would say that they are electorally elected representatives of Kashmir, but they were actually never the true representatives of Kashmiri people. So, which is actually which has been proved recently, because they're all under arrest, and there is absolutely no mercy with them also from the Indian government during this time. And coming to the other, because there are two types of politics in Kashmir: mainstream and the separatism, which is the pro-resistance movement. Basically, the pro-resistance leadership was given some kind of importance till a decade ago, when they even participated in a dialogue when it was held during the Vajpayee's time, and there was a roundtable conference that happened, and some pro-resistance leadership also took part in that. But all of it's kind of disappeared in the last 10 years. And that is why I said earlier also, this political void was created deliberately, and Kashmiris were omitted from this sphere where they would have been a party to it, or they would have represented the people of Kashmir. There is a little representation on the international level, not a lot, I would say, very little, which have managed to in the recent days arrange those protests, and across the globe, if you might have followed, there were a lot of protests in a lot of cities around the globe, and this stand with Kashmir, red for Kashmir movement was going on. So that is there, that international representation or presence of Kashmiris internationally is there. But when it comes to power and power in politics, there is absolutely no power with Kashmiris. The only thing we have is our voice, is our pen, the whatever we can do as academicians, as journalists, as civilians, as a Kashmiri. We have started, or we have found the ways where we have created our own ways of resistance. People write poems, people make music, people write books. There is this emergence of art, which is actually a form of resistance from Kashmir, only because we don't have any space in politics.
So as we move to a conclusion, Ruha, I want to again ask you about something that you've recently written. And you wrote, knowing about the nature of the Indian state and the history of its behavior with Kashmiris, India will always respond to any form of dissent in Kashmir with its military might. In context of that, how does the future of Kashmir look to you? And what do you think is necessary in order to bring about stability and peace and prosperity to the region?
Prosperity we can only talk about when there is peace, and let's not twist the facts here that prosperity is something that we do not care about right now. What we care about is the basic human rights, which is not living in a jail that you have created, incarcerating 8 million people and just landlocking it from everywhere, taking away all the connections, all the means of communications they could possibly have. And so we can't talk about prosperity in such situations. So peace is only it will only happen when the issue of Kashmir would be addressed according to the aspirations of people of Kashmir, according to the United Nations resolutions, which is the right to self-determination, which is what we have been demanding for the last 75 years. What do I see the future for Kashmir? For now, it looks very dark. It looks very very scary, because we don't know how people are going to react to this when all of this is lifted, because today or tomorrow they have to lift the curfew. They have to ease out things in on the ground. So time will only tell. I wish and I pray that blood is not shed, but as much as I said, as much as we hope that it does not happen, we also know how India behaves in Kashmir. We have seen a very ruthless, merciless form of the Indian state in Kashmir for the last 7 decades. So it will not be a surprise if they mercilessly kill people this time as well.
A final question for you. So what do you think that the international community can do or should do in order to bring about peace to the Kashmir region?
Everybody has to first start talking about the issue. Everybody has to first understand the issue. Everybody knows that there is some kind of problem between India and Pakistan, but nobody goes to the roots of the problem, which is Kashmir. If Kashmir issue is solved, the entire South Asian region is going to come to prosperity, as you said, because there will be peace. And international community has not so far done anything substantial, except for a few countries issuing statements, or the Organization of Islamic Countries issuing statements. Everything has to be done beyond those mere statements. Effective steps need to be taken. The countries, powerful countries that are managing the world order right now, need to question and confront India for its wrongdoings in Kashmir. And both India and Pakistan, they have to make them come to the table for a dialogue and include Kashmiris in that dialogue too. That is what I hope and wish for, and that is the only way this issue is going to be solved.
Well, Ruha Shah, I want to thank you for your time and for your willingness to so freely express what's in your heart and what's on your mind. And I do want to stand in solidarity with you in looking for that peace, which, as you've rightly said, is needed in order to bring about prosperity. Thank you so much.